back when I was strictly boots on the ground, it was so frustrating to have a manager come to me and say, "Hey, we're going to change how you do something day in and day out, and this is the way you're going to do it." I'm like, "Well, that's not going to work. That's going to make it even harder or something." And it's like, "Why wouldn't you come and talk to me?" So I'm really trying as I get older in the positions that I hold, I really try and keep that very true to let's talk to the people that are actually doing it, because you're going to learn some really really good things, and that could really change the direction that we go. and and it's their day-to-day life. They're not going to try and make it harder, so let's listen to them. Yes, we can sit in a group at a table and have some discussions on the direction that we want to go, but still pull those other people in.
So JaSondra Schmidt joins us for today's Leadership Disrupted podcast from her cornfield near Medina, North Dakota. And JaSondra, I was thinking about the best way to introduce you to the Leadership Disrupted audience. And I think the best way to start is with a question. It's kind of a compound question. So here's how it goes. Help us understand how you get it all done. You have a corporate job with all of the things that come along with a corporate job. You have the direct reports, you have the bosses, you have the in-office meetings, you have the remote meetings, you have the performance standards, the quotas, you have performance reviews, you have the tough conversations, you have the challenging situations, you have all of those things, and you're in the third year of your farming startup, really farm and ranch, because you do both, crops and cattle. So you're in the third year of that, and that is a full-time endeavor. That is, to call it a side hustle is so not right, because it's so much more than that. It's a full hustle. And you have two young daughters that you're raising, and you have grandparents that you're helping out with as they, enter their later years. So let's just start with the life you lead. How does it work? It almost doesn't seem possible.
Yeah, it depends on what day you get me on. Some days it's like, oh, it's you rely on family and you really rely on your partner, which with my husband, I'm so grateful that he has taken this adventure on with me. Most days it is survival. Every day is pure survival. There's not a really good way to say it. We make it through every day and it's like, okay, now we go on to the next one. It is trying to get on a rhythm. We always say that, oh, we're going to get on a rhythm. We have to get on a schedule. Never. We try. It is early mornings. It's running and getting my work done in the morning, running my daughters. Again, we live in rural North Dakota, so it takes 30 miles one way to drop them off at daycare. And then coming back to my remote job at my house. So 60 miles before I even start my actual day. Focusing then full-fledged on work, trying to get and be 100% present for them. I really try and work hard to keep those two somewhat separate, my work and my farm life, just because when I have to go and totally switch and swing the pendulum to the next side to then switch to farming, and then I got to swing the pendulum way back to the right side and go back to work, it's really hard. So I try and keep it when I'm in the working hours, let's try and keep it work. And then after work, it is, what do people call it? They're 5 to 9. So then I run, go grab our girls from daycare, come back, and we all meet at the farm. Our farm is about 10 miles from where we live. So we meet out here and then we try and usually fix things that broke on us. And then thank goodness for PTO, because when it comes to harvest time, we try and save up a lot of our PTO to do harvest in the day. And I run the combine, my husband runs the semis, and we just try and figure out what best fits us. And he is the mechanic and he is the trucker. I can run some machinery, and so I like to run the combine, and then he takes all the grain away. And again, you think that your life is busy, it's busy, but until you really start telling your story, you don't realize how crazy and busy it is and how much you have to pivot. I am very grateful again to have friends and family that help us out a lot. We couldn't do this without our family. My 90, well, he's going to be 90, my 90-year-old grandfather, he's always around. And just yesterday, he was helping my husband try and get our 1086 out of gear, and he was just standing there just waiting. He just couldn't wait to help. And then having Jason's folks and my folks being able to help with our daughters, that is a huge savior. And we try and again slam a lot of stuff out while our kids are in daycare and on weekends.
Well, and so speaking of weekends, we're recording this on a Sunday, and when you and I were communicating earlier this morning, you said, "Yeah, we'll do it sometime after we've got to load some hay," and you had some other things that you had a whole list of to do items on your relaxing Sunday, and then I'm just adding to the load with a podcast recording. So sorry about that. Um,
That's okay. Again, we pivot very well.
and so then, how do you keep yourself not just engaged, because the engagement has to happen. Like it's not an option. You've got to do the work. How do you keep yourself motivated? How do you keep yourself happy? I mean, I talk to you at a lot of different times, and you always seem focused. And maybe that's just overwhelm. You're focused on the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing, and you don't stop. I mean, how do you do that?
We don't stop. In the wintertime is kind of where you get that space to think about next year for the farming side of things, and you really reflect on the good things because that's what makes a farmer keep going. I just heard the other day where it's like if you're a farmer, you don't ask the question you don't want to know because you still need to be positive for the future. And it's like, wow, that's actually true. Um, and being positive, I did have someone at work ask me, like, gosh, how do you just stay so positive with all that you have going on? We have a daughter that we're doctoring with and with the farm and all the things. And I said, I've actually had to work at it. It's taken time, it's taken practice, letting things kind of roll off your back and just go with the flow. And again, if you can't be positive, then then life is gonna be pretty miserable.
Yeah, and you'd probably crack. I mean, if you couldn't somehow maintain some degree of mental positivity, a person would break. Absolutely.
Yes, and I have said, I'm so grateful if I was just farming and, they talk about farming is the highest for suicide rate, and if I was just doing that, I would really have to reach out to people, and I'm very grateful in my day-to-day job that I get those people that I can reach out to because one phone call can change your whole day. I mean, it
Mhm.
could change it for the worse, but most likely it changes it for the better, and then you can get on another phone call, and because I don't have that interaction at the store level, so I'm really having to use my phone, and it's like, "Okay, let's make another phone call. Let's talk about something else. Let's change this," and usually by the end of the phone call, whoever you're talking with, it makes you happier. So I really rely on my team, on my husband, on my friends, and listening again to podcasts and all the things to change your outlook and to change your mindset.
Well, then let's focus first on the corporate job side of your world. One of the things I was wondering about, because I know, in the millennial generation, which you belong to, having side hustles, having multiple endeavors is kind of natural. It's something that is normalized in the
Mhm.
millennial generation, but you have bosses who are in older generations, and for many of those, the boomers, etcetera, um, they their wiring is a bit different. They think of, okay, you've got your job and you got your family, and never the two shall meet. And if you have a side hustle, and if you're putting too much energy into your side hustle, that means you're taking energy away from your job. It's sort of, very rigid. Now, I understand the organization you work for and the specific people you work for, they're very supportive, which I congratulate that. They're in the agricultural machinery business. So they understand that world, and I think they understand how much it requires from you. But do you find that to be unique, or are there others who are managing to balance, full-time day job with full-time next the other day job?
Yeah, for us, I don't know if it just comes in the territory that a lot of us have the side hustle, and it most likely is farming and ranching. So the team that I lead, I actually have 2 gentlemen that they farm and ranch on the side as well. And we talk quite often on what does the future look like? How long do we have you? Are you planning on working here for, ever? Are you wanting to go back to the farm full time? So I do have one gentleman that wants to get to the farm full time, and I am 100% supportive of that. So is the company that I work for. They always want to know your goals and what do you want to reach and how can they help you. It might not mean that we get to be here for the next 10 years. It might be the next 3 years. So I've worked with him and talked with him since we have kind of succession planned our farm. I have given him a few ideas on how to do that with his, which has been a really fun conversation. That's another way that him and I are connecting. It's something that we have in common and being a resource because it's so hard for these farmers to figure out how to succession plan. Maybe in corporate America and a job in a city, they might have that figured out more, have a board that does that. In farming, no one has that. So having that conversation and being a resource to him, because when we started doing it on our farm, we didn't have any resources. It was me Googling, me making phone calls, calling other farmers and realizing it's not common to succession plan early or even succession plan at all. And then so him and I have that conversation and it might be that he works for us for 5 years or hopefully with us helping him a lot, it might mean that he's there for 10 years and part of the time might just be half the time. But when you have that set of knowledge and that set of skills, I don't want to lose that. I want to be selfish on that side of it. But at the end of the day, he's another human, and I really want him to reach his goals. And if that's to take over the family farm and run it full fledged, we're here to support it. And our company is also on board with it.
Well, and I can only imagine that since you are in the agriculture industry and all of your customers are in the agriculture industry, having employees who are not just talking that talk, they're living it. They are living that life that their customers are living. That's got to have some positive benefits in your day-to-day interactions, both externally with the customers, but even internally as you're brainstorming, as you're generating new ideas, thinking of new ways to operate. Does it affect I guess the decisions that are made internally in terms of how you are going to not just interact with customers, but grow the business?
Yes. And if you're in the egg industry and that doesn't change it, I would reevaluate because I always say, why should we know better than our customers? We should be using them as a resource, as an asset. I take what we're trying to build and I try and think of it as a customer, which is very fun. And when I sit around those tables and we talk, I always say, this is from my experience. This is what I have encountered. This is how I would handle it as a customer. I might be wrong, but let's ask. So I did bring up having customer advisory groups, and our company is going to move into that, which I'm super happy for because, again, they are a resource. Let's use them. They're paying us to be a trusted advisor for them. So let's utilize that. Let's make them feel really a part of this family that we are. And again, at the end of the day, we want them to be just as progressive and successful as we are. So having that conversation and then going back the other way, that I hope that we have a close enough relationship with them that they feel comfortable saying, hey, I saw another dealership or I saw this on social media. Is this something that your dealership can do? Is this something that you guys would look at? So really leveraging both sides of that conversation is super important.
It's got to just enhance the quality of the communication because you speak the same language. You almost a shorthand where you don't have to explain what a particular piece of equipment is or does or is intended for. When something breaks down, you know the implications of what breaks down. When someone's going to write a check to repair something, you deep in your bones, you know the implications of having to write a $5,000 check in order to repair a piece of equipment that you didn't expect to break down for another 3 years. So that's fantastic. I did speak to a CEO a couple of months ago who had entered. He told me the story of how he had entered a new industry. He became the CEO of a business in a new industry, and one of his first objectives was to meet with some customers. And of course, then his operations team and his marketing people, they set up some quote customer meetings, which were originally what they had set up were 30-minute customer meetings. And the CEO came back to them and said, this is not a meet and greet. This is, I want to meet them. I want to engage with them. Some of them I want to become friends with. I want I'm seeing these as long-term relationships. And so ultimately what he did do is he took those initial meet and greets and leveraged those to create actual relationships. And then he said to me, my real goal was I wanted some friends. I wanted, if I could get 3 or 4 or 5 actual friends who are using our product day to day. And when we have conversations, they're not a focus group. They're not anything other than my friends who use our product and will tell me exactly what's great, what's not so great. But of course, because he was in a new industry, he had to really work very consciously to do that. Now, you've in not just the corporate job you're in now, but you've worked in the ag industry really since you got out of college. And it correct me if I'm wrong, but my sense of it is it's relatively male dominated. It's mostly men. Maybe that's changing with the times, but it's still my impression that you've emerged as a leader surrounded mostly by men. And how have you found that? Without deciding in advance that that's challenging or not challenging, how have you found that to be?
Yeah, so in the ag industry, when I started moving into the ag industry, there was not a lot of females. And like I went to college, I went to be an agronomist, and my class was full of males. I was the only female. And by chance, I was also the only organic person in there as well. So two strikes. And sitting there, no one really treated me any different. Moving into the corporate structure of things, I did have some cases where there was conversations and it was more geared to because I was a female. Looking at it nowadays, it is kind of a dime a dozen, which I'm so proud of because there are many female leaders. They bring a different look to it. They bring I can say, softness to it. And we're very good at multitasking. Women are very good. And now that I've become a mother, I've realized like we handle it and juggle it pretty well. I like to think. So a few things with creating those relationships, I feel like when I came in, I was pretty much the only female in a lot of groups that I was in, and I had to work really hard to get the trust of the farmer. And so that made me actually have a closer relationship with them because I had to go and create relationships with most likely their significant other or their spouse to make them feel comfortable. Any female sitting in a very close proximity in a cab with any male most likely would make a female a little bit worried. So I wanted to make sure that they had no problems when their husband or boyfriend or whatever is calling me at 9 o'clock at night because something broke down. It is all professional. When I'm out in the tractor cab or combine cab with them, it is strictly professional. So once I had a sales manager ask me, he brought me to his office and said, "Why is it taking you 3 times longer to close deals?" Um, and so that's after I went through Precision Ag and then went to the sales side of things. And I told him, I said, well, when I go out there, the first point of contact, I really don't try and sell anything. I'm trying to make sure that the farmer and most likely his wife, because at that point, 99.9% of all my clients were males, making sure that that female was comfortable with me. And I wanted to meet them and I wanted to connect with them. My second time going out and talking with them was really making sure that that farmer trusted me and I knew my product that I was selling so that I gained his trust. Third time was to close. And I told him, I said, I really like you to look at my closing rate versus your other salesmen because I think mine is pretty high. Yes, it took me 3 times longer to get there, but my closing rate is pretty high. And he also did, mention that, oh, if you, would wear a lower cut shirt, you could sell more. And I'm like,
Seriously?
seriously, I think in this day and age, a lot of things have happened. So I'm hoping that no one would say that. Um, but yes, and I still have a salesman that we talk about it today where he's like, man, you could have really, taken someone to HR there. And I made a joke and I was like, it's only going to bring in, this
Yeah.
type of a customer. And that's not the customer I'm looking for. And if that's how you're looking at a female, then so be it. That gentleman, I can tell you today, has not changed. Um, but that has made me, again, being a female in the ag industry has really made me work to create those relationships. And I would have to say all the relationships that I've created have lasted a long time. They have lasted me through multiple dealerships and endeavors that I've gone through. They have now been an asset. to me in the farming. I have called them to ask questions. We bought some fans for one of our grain bins from one of my old customers. And I mean, it gave me a huge book of people that I can reach out to and use kind of as, someone to bounce ideas off of. So,
And just one point of clarity, that gentleman you were just speaking with, you no longer work with him. That's one of your previous employers.
yeah.
So just to make that, clear.
Yes.
But it is still amazing that in the 2020s, it's still happening. It's, it still exists in terms of being comfortable, not just thinking it, but saying those words. Quite interesting.
Yeah.
Um, so then in the ag machinery business that you're currently in, I have to imagine that the business is under some pressure because we're hearing about layoffs, we're hearing about pressures on farmers, we're hearing about the impact of tariffs, we're hearing about a lot of things. Um, expense expenses up, crop prices down. What kind of pressure is that putting on you? I guess both at work, because I imagine people are wondering, am I going to be next? But also, in your own farm, what kind of pressure is that putting on you?
Yeah, day to day, it's a lot of pressure. It is a lot of doom and gloom. So to try and change that narrative, like my husband just said last night, when we go through hard times, he always says this one saying, and I think a lot of people probably know it. Hard times create strong men create easy times create weak men. And right now we're going through that hard time and we're hoping that it creates, us to be strong. Yes, in the ag industry and the dealership world that I live in, a lot of people have lost their jobs. And it's not because of poor performance. It is just from the books and it's really hard. We have lost multiple people. I have lost a few people off of my team as well. It was very tough being in the position and changing someone's life because I personally know a job can be taken away from you very quickly. And I had to reflect on that with my boss above me at that time when we had to let a gentleman go. And it was really hard. And he said, "JaSondra, I see that you're really struggling with this." And I said, "Yeah." And I said, "I'll struggle from behind closed doors. When the conversation happens, we will have that conversation." And because I'm close with all my team members, and I told him, I said, "I will never change the way I manage just to protect me on some of these hard days." And I always have to keep telling myself that. It's like, no, I would never change, the close-knit team that we have just so that if we have to have another round of layoffs, that it won't hit so hard. Nope. Again, we're all humans, we're all people, and we have families and responsibilities. And when you take that away and you're making that decision for somebody, it should weigh heavy on you. And it does for me as well. In the farming side of things, looking at all of the prices, it is very hard some days to keep doing it. And we just recently had to, or we have to stick a bunch of money into our combine, and we had an unforeseen cost this year with haying equipment and making hay. And we're like, are we going to make it? Are we going to be able to find that money and make it another year? Because every day crop prices just keep going down, our basis keeps going up, input costs keep going up. And now looking at, are we going to be able to get rid of our soybeans? Because um we already have elevators around us locally saying that they might not take any soybeans unless they're on contract. Well, if you make a contract, you're looking at $8.90 beans, which that's cutting it really close. So
Mhm.
I don't feel comfortable making that contract. The market is telling us that we're supposed to be holding beans right now and selling corn, but corn's in the threes. And I mean, fertilizer is going up. And we had the conversation the other day of fertilizers going up. So do we purchase some now? And I'm like, I don't even think I can purchase any. We did put a lot of fertilizer just this year because we knew that it most likely was going to go up. So now it might be that we're not going to be able to put fertilizer down just because of the cost. So again, it's kind of like a game of Plinko. You are putting a little Plinko thing there, and where it drops, it's going to drop, and we're going to have to shift, and that's probably going to be running older equipment yet for many years. It does bring me a little bit of comfort knowing I do have my day job, right? And to fall back on that, a lot of people in the farm industry say, oh, the most successful farmer is somebody that farms, 500 acres and has a day job. So I'm kind of living on that prayer right now that that will make us successful and we will make through it. And, you know, the next day isn't promised. So let's just take it as it comes.
Well, one of the reasons I was so looking forward to this conversation is because as a millennial, you are leading others, both in your personal life, you're leading others in your farm life, and also, of course, leading others in your work life, in your day job, corporate work life. And a lot of the others that you're leading are younger. They're not millennials. They're more, Gen Z types. So, what is it like for someone like you with and I hate to speak to generalities, but in general, we tend to see millennials as hardworking side hustlers, etc. And in general, we hear about Gen Z workers who are maybe a little less engaged, a little less motivated, little less focused on their work life and more focused on their life. Now, I'm going to say, first of all, tell me if that rings true, and then just tell me what is your experience like. What do you do to effectively lead Gen Z workers?
So on my team, I have one younger gentleman that is about a 50%. He works in the service department, then 50% with me. Um, he has had some stuff in his life that has changed who he is before I even met him. And it seems like his work ethic is super strong. Through the dealership, I don't physically manage any Gen Zs, but what I have noticed working close enough to them is it's really hard to find a motivator because money's not a motivator, extra time's not a motivator, being hard on them's not a motivator, being soft. So it's really hard to figure out what motivates them. And I know that that's the age old question right now with the generation and where they're totally comfortable just packing up and leaving and not having those hard conversations. I don't know if that is technology pushing that they don't want to sit and physically have that conversation with somebody because millennials we're okay having sitting our manager down and saying, "Hey, I'm struggling here. How can we fix it?" Or I'm going to have to put my time off and leave. So, we've had multiple times where people just up and leave and it seems like it's most likely those Gen Zs and yeah, and I don't know what a motivator is for them. I am lucky to have probably two different, generations that I lead in my team, and my conversation with them is, "I'm an adult, you're an adult, you know how to manage your time, you know what your job is. If you don't, shame on me, but you know what your job is, you know how to manage time. I'm not going to micromanage you. I have the utmost faith in you, so please do your job. If there's any time where I feel like you are straying, I will bring you back in. But again, you have all the confidence you need. I'm supporting you. Now let's go and make it work. And that has paid me back, I would say, treating my team like that, because that's how I like to be treated as well. I know what my job is. I know how to manage my time. I am busy. You are busy. I am proud to work at the company that I work at, and I take pride in that. And there's nothing that I'm going to do to hurt it. And again, then they support me hopefully
Mhm.
back because that's how I run it. So,
Well, I'll share with you my theory of working effectively with Gen Z employees. And again, I know I'm talking in broad strokes, but generally speaking, and in order to share that theory, we have to go back about 30, 40 years. Um, I know this story. Your grandfather, he joined the army after he served. He came back to the U.S. He started up his farm, and then eventually got married, had kids. But he started farming in an age when you could, in fact, um, start a farm with relative predictability. You could get an operating loan if you needed it, but at the end of each year, generally, you were able to pay off that operating loan and then have enough left over to live for another year and then to get started the next year. And that system just worked. And then his son, your father, farmed, but in a different world. The world started to change. It was more financially challenging. Interest rates were higher, costs were higher, yields were lower, farm prices were lower. But it was all like a long term trend. And then coming to you again, managed to start the farm, get an operating loan, working very hard. But you've said this to me, it seems like some days when you really talk through the math, it's like you're working for an entire year to end up at zero, to end up and so now that world that you've experienced in 5 years or 10 years, I don't know that I would recommend. If there was a Gen Z, JaSondra, I don't know that either you or I would say, oh yeah, you should do it. Oh yeah, you should because the lifestyle it may be that the math just will no longer work. And you take that farming story and you extrapolate it to almost every other career, every other business. And I think um, this is not an excuse, but I think the younger generation of employees have internalized this world that's getting more and more and more challenging. And I just think that they don't have a reason. They don't have a reason to work hard. And so what you've done, just the way you describe it to me, you've given them a reason because you've connected with them as a human. You see them. You let them see you. They're not going to go overboard for the big corporate entity. They're not going to go overboard for any, other entity other than their their colleague who sees them and they want to do important work for their colleague that makes a difference for their colleague. And so I think that that level of connection is very important to younger employees. Not that it always works, but I think it is very important to them. But that level of connection is challenging for boomer leaders, for older leaders, because what we are used to is, hey, I'm going to give you KPIs, I'm going to give you OKRs, I'm going to give you projects, and then I'm going to track your projects. They're used to managing activity,
Mhm.
not engaging with humans. And when I say engaging with humans, I don't mean just, hey, how's it going? Hey, what's happening with your life? How are your kids? Oh, it's more than just remembering birthdays. It's actually seeing them. It's actually engaging with them. It's understanding what's important to them. And that takes time. It takes intentionality. And I think it's part of the reason why older leaders struggle because they just have not had to learn those skills. Now that's my theory. It could be right, could be wrong, but I guess one day we'll know for sure.
Yes.
So tell me about your leaders, like the people who you report to, who you engage with. How do they think of you? How do they treat you? What is that working relationship like?
So I've been at this dealership for 3 years now, and I believe I've had 4 bosses, and they manage so differently, which is so neat because then I take that and I'm like, okay, I like that piece from this person, that piece from this person. And they have all been super open with me, and I work remote. So I really had to work on my side as well to create that relationship with my manager to give them the confidence that, hey, I'm working remote, but I know how to do my job. I am meeting all of our quotas and deadlines, and I'm still having communication with you, and you're not having to just call on me and check up on me. And so I utilize this in both customer relationship and my manager relationship as well. I call it the triangle effect, where which one of my managers is like, it should be a circle. There should be no hard edges. And I'm like, no, I like the triangle effect. And I'm assuming a
Huh?
lot of people utilize this where it's me, the person I'm trying to connect with, and something we have in common. And that could be anything. That could be the food you like, the drinks you drink, the vehicle that you drive, cattle that you run, something like that. Because then they don't just think of you as you're my employee or you're my boss. It is JaSondra that likes this. And I really liked doing that with my customers because it's not just, oh, so and so that works for this company. It is, oh, that's JaSondra. And because again, when I either move from a different job to another one, I want them to have confidence in me and know me in and out and follow me hopefully. And that has paid me back. And with my managers, it has been really exciting that they have leaned on me a little bit more as I have opened up about me being a farmer and using my day-to-day experiences and feeling very confident that they're hearing me. I've, taken where another coworker has had an issue and not sure what to do with it, and I'm like, "Okay, you either let me know if this is where you're just wanting to talk or are you wanting someone to take action? Because if you're wanting someone to take action, I will let's go. And so I'm very clear with them on, if you just want to talk, great. If you want action, here I am. And that could be in any aspect of the dealership that I work in. You could work in parts or the shop or whatever. If you have a problem, bring it to me, because I will take it to the next level to have that conversation. And my boss recently has been very open with that on, okay, I hear that, and now, what can we do about it? And, do you have any ideas? And I even had HR got brought into the meeting, and they were very grateful that I took the time and had that conversation with somebody that wasn't even in my team. Because again, I look at it as, we're all human, and this is our life. And if they find somebody that they can connect with and have that comfortability with, and that they can talk to, and if that's me, great, I will take that on. So I have been very blessed with great managers in the dealership that I work with today. A few in the past that I when I reflect on, I had one that was a very big chameleon, and it's like, I just don't know how people don't see this. Like, every room that he walks into, he fits that realm and that genre, and I'm like, gosh, is that how we're supposed to do it? And he is no longer here, but it makes you question sometimes when you're in a certain level, and you either look up or you look down, and you kind of wonder, how are people in this position, or why are they in that position? And I usually try and take that and learn from it. So,
There's so much to unpack in what you just said. The first thing that strikes me is, when you say we are all humans, that's part of you authentically. And I wish more senior leaders felt it as authentically. And I understand the pressures they're under. You have a certain, number of people on your team, and it may be relatively easy to say, I'm going to connect with these 7, these 12, these 14, whatever. And I understand a leader who may be leading an organization of 3,000 or 300,000 may feel like he or she can't have that same attitude, but I don't think it's true. I think when you step into a meeting with someone, you get a sense of how they think about employees in general. You get a sense of that we're all humans, we're all in this together, we're figuring this out together. There's a sense that comes off, and I encourage leaders to foster within themselves that understanding of all of us as humans figuring this out together. And I think that's part of what helps you as a millennial relate to them, but also generally millennials, they want to grow, they want to grow as leaders, they want to evolve, they want to develop. And so a great leader for you is going to be someone who fosters that growth, who gives you opportunities to grow, who wants to try some of your ideas, who wants to engage with you and make you part of the solution, not just deliver the solution for you to execute. um, Now the other thing to unpack within that, I think the reason it works with you in particular is because you are what I call a boots on the ground leader. I mean, literally boots on the ground. But you've you've been the granddaughter of a farmer, the daughter of a farmer, and that's not just a passive role. I know you worked very hard growing up. You were in the field. You were doing what you could do, probably more than you should be expected to do at at, at the various stages that you were in. But by the time you arrive in the corporate world, in the ag industry, you have lived it. You are a boots on you. Your boots have been on that ground, have been doing that work, have been understanding that language, and that brings a sense of credibility, a sense of confidence. And I know that's got to be a big part of the formula for your effectiveness as a leader. Have you ever had leaders who didn't have that boots on the ground experience, who were maybe more theoretical, more business schoolish, as opposed to really understanding um, the market or the industry? And what is that like?
yes. So I have had, I would say, a couple of those, and it's really hard, because you can either take it, like you said previous, of you're in this area and you want to learn and you want to create those relationships, and you really have to work for it, especially if you don't have that experience. Not saying you can't have something in common and learn from it. So when they don't have that boots on the ground, and so right away there's this level when you are boots on the ground and you look up and you're like, okay, well, can I trust this person? Um, is there any clout? Is there anything that goes with this person? And they also can bring another side. So the one side of, yes, they didn't have boots on the ground. They were missing kind of the egg side of things, which again was very frustrating. They didn't know how things operated, and that was very trying, and struggles trying to be on the bottom going, no, like shaking you like, what are you doing? Why are you not listening? But then the other side of it, one thing that I've taken away from some of those leaders is the out of the box thinking. And I like to do that. I like to think of, okay, this is where we are now and this is where we want to get. But instead of taking one right, let's take three lefts to get there. And I think I've taken that from them a little bit because they didn't really know. And sometimes they weren't listening. So their ideas were kind of strange. But having someone outside of the ag industry coming in and looking at it, it's with fresh eyes. So we should all listen to that perspective as well, because it does bring some sort of interest. And so back to thinking outside of the box, when things are hard here on the farm or in corporate world, you need to think outside the box. Like I was telling my manager when we were having some layoffs, I'm like, what can we do? Like give us the okay to start thinking of crazy things and ask crazy things of us. Because if that means that we get to work longer, we will do crazy things. But back to, yeah, working with somebody that doesn't have that experience and they're not taking that time and effort to learn, to have that commonality, they usually don't seem to last very long, or they can buffalo their way in and last quite a while. Then it is very hard. One of those leaders, I actually left and quit. That again was a hard conversation to have, but I knew that I wasn't going to get anywhere if I stayed there. And again, all I have in this world is my name, and I take a lot of pride in my name. And so I decided to move on, and right when I gave my 2 weeks, he went 2 doors down and, started talking poorly about my future, and it's like, okay, this industry also is very small. So
Mhm.
when you do something, it it follows you. So, and I think that that gentleman, it followed him, and yep, he's no longer in the proximity of me in multiple hundreds of miles. So,
Well, it's not common, but I have had experiences and conversations with leaders, one in particular that comes to mind where he had started on a factory floor. That's where his work started, and he had worked his way up through frontline jobs, middle level management jobs, senior management jobs, and he had that boots on the ground experience in a particular industry, in a particular business, but he knew what that felt like. And then when he made the transition to another company in another industry at a senior level, I think because he knew what it felt like to have that boots on the ground knowledge. Almost his first effort was going back to the front line of this new business and making sure that he spent enough time, traveled with enough sales reps, spent enough time in operations, spent enough time in each department, and not just visiting, not just getting acquainted, but actually, he probably couldn't really fully duplicate those years of experience, but he had something registered in his brain. Like he knew what he wanted to feel like when he was talking about these other divisions and departments, et cetera. So I think to some degree, having boots on the ground experience in one industry creates a mindset that will drive a leader toward wanting to recreate that when they're going into some new business, new industry, new wherever. Um, so, and I hate to keep referring to you as a millennial, but you are in fact a millennial, and it's
yep.
one of the things that I find interesting because um, most millennial leaders, like I said, they want to grow, they want to evolve, they take every opportunity, just like you just described. You suddenly you have a leader who is not having boots on the ground experience, and you decide, okay, I'm going to take advantage, I'm going to evolve based on what experience this person does have. So I'm going to take what they have and I'm going to build from that, as opposed to just looking at their gaps. That's very millennial of you. So
When I
congratulations for that.
when I always tell people, when you climb a ladder, they always refer to it as a ladder. I always say there's still rungs to come down, and I never mean that in you can get fired. It's please use those rungs to come back down to this level and talk to these people, because back when I was strictly boots on the ground, it was so frustrating to have a manager come to me and say, "Hey, we're going to change how you do something day in and day out, and this is the way you're going to do it." I'm like, "Well, that's not going to work. That's going to make it even harder, or something." And it's like, why wouldn't you come and talk to me? So I'm really trying, as I get older in the positions that I hold, I really try and keep that very true to let's talk to the people that are actually doing it, because you're going to learn some really, really good things, and that could really change the direction that we go. And it's their day-to-day life. They're not going to try and make it harder, so let's listen to them. Yes, we can sit in a group at a table and have some discussions on the direction that we want to go, but still pull those other people in. And we're actually going through a project right now, and I suggested, like, let's get some other viewpoints here from people that are still talking to our customers day to day, and let's see what they have to say about it. So we're going to start going down that avenue, and I'm really excited to get their input. And we're building for something that we're not even physically set up to handle right now. So it's challenging, but it's so fun to be like, no strings attached. Let's start thinking, let's start dreaming. Let's try and hit it before anyone else does. And now let's utilize everyone's knowledge, because we are farmers and ranchers, and we do work a day job as well, and there's so many of us that have that. So now let's capitalize on it, and let's set us apart in the industry.
You know, what's so great about this conversation is that it's easy for people like me to look at the ag industry in general and then farmers in particular from a distance and think that I understand, think that I know what's going on, but there's just so much more. It's so much deeper. It's so much faster. There's so much more happening. How is technology impacting really, I guess any aspect of your life? What's happening in the technology space that's changing things for you?
Oh man, it's going so fast. As the equipment dealers that I work for, they say, 5 times more, 5 times faster. And even being on the customer side of things, being like, holy cow, this is coming really fast. Like there is now an autonomous tractor that is going out on the market, and that is just mind blowing that you're having a piece of equipment that you're not having to put someone in. And because there was a need, we're not having as many workers. Farmers are getting fewer and fewer. And so there's still those acres that need to be covered. And so now there's an autonomous tractor. Having a whole bunch of answers at your fingertips is both good and bad. On the bad side is people think that they can get results instantaneously, and you have to remind them that, we're still human, and go back to when there was a bag phone, or when you had to walk to the house and call off the corded phone. But now everything's so instant. So when you call somebody and they don't answer, you get frustrated because you wanted that answer right away. So there's your phone for Googling. You can purchase equipment and fertilizer and seed all online now, and there's not that human interaction sometimes, which is great because you get a lot of stuff done in the day. And I'm really wanting to kind of go back to having that, account manager that knows their family inside and out and knows that operation. So on the technology side, on that, purchasing equipment from outside your area and then capitalizing on that when they bring it in, on, yes, you didn't buy it from us, but let's still get some revenue from updates and marrying it together with your planter or air drill and taking a look at it that way. Also moving into kind of like the AI sector, the the dealership that I work for and for the actual brand that I work for, they are creating stuff with AI constantly right now. And how we're looking at it is making a tool that takes all of this data, all of our tech manuals and work order history and knowledge that we have put in a PDF form of people that have worked for us that someday they're not going to be here. So we put it in a PDF form, and now you can ask a question and it's going to go through all of it and spit it out. So we're hoping from the dealership side of things that we're going to get a faster result for our boots on the ground people, for our customers, and also looking as an avenue for our customers as well of, yes, you're wanting that instant instant answer. We might not be there at 2 in the morning when you're harvesting, but we're gonna give you an option of here, you use this. And then I was so excited because I'm like, oh my gosh, like just think of all that data that you're gonna capture on the backside and what you can do with it. So when I was back boots on the ground, it was all manual. It was, a notepad and a pencil and keeping track of all my records and inputting work orders. And then when year end comes, following up with that customer, now it's like we have something that can capture all these questions and all of that data, and we can still give it to the customer at year end and give it to them in a nice, pretty package that they can carry with them on. Here was my issues that I had in spring. I don't have to ask anyone now because they gave it to me in this little booklet. Or they have now given me a resource where I can text it in, I can call, and it can decipher what I need, and it can spit out some results for me. So I'm really excited on where that's going to go. It's very interesting on what could potentially happen. I like that, but I also want to still keep that customer relationship going. It's not just a one-off quick sale. We need to know our products, we need to know our people as well. So how to marry those two together to get the end result is going to be challenging, but I think it's going to be exciting.
I think as your company and competitive companies, as they move toward leveraging technology more and more and more, that's all good. You get efficiencies from that. But then in the end, particularly in the ag industry, relationships are still important. And if you let those relationships fade away because the customer doesn't have to talk to a human to figure out what part to replace or to figure out how to fix something themselves, when they can self-serve more and more, well, that's great. But if they're not engaging with humans, the next time a competitor human comes along and says, "Hey, can I talk to you about the next new thing? Can I talk?" It creates a risk that you can lose those relationships because there are, I think, 5 main competitors in your space, and every one of those competitors has sales reps. Every one of them has, people out in the field. Every one of them is looking for any possible edge to try to grab new business if at all possible. So that's a very natural tension that I think happens in the ag industry, and not just the ag industry in general, businesses in general. What are some things? Assume for a moment that a lot of the viewers of this podcast don't necessarily live and breathe agriculture. What might be some things that surprise them, either regarding your corporate job life or your farm life or both? What might be some things that they just don't get because they haven't been boots on the ground?
That is a really good question. Man, that again, we're just humans. We're trying to feed the world and keep that going. And every day it seems like it gets farther and farther away. We're losing dairies constantly. Smaller farms are going away. And nothing that we're doing in farming and ranching is we're not trying to do anything bad. And when people talk about, oh, be sustainable, be the next sustainable farm or be a sustainable farm, I'm like, well, aren't we all? Aren't all ranchers and farmers trying to make it better for the next year for us? That's all we're trying to do. We're trying to, we love this world wholeheartedly. Weirdly, I think it might be born into us because it it's a hard world, and for us to look at it and go, we're feeding the world and the people, and we take a lot of pride in that. When you're a farmer and you can go to someone else and say that you're a farmer, that is pretty heavy. And we take a lot of pride in that. We're not trying to hurt anyone. And also there are so many opportunities for someone that didn't grow up or doesn't live in ag. One of my coworkers that she was actually boots on the ground with me as well. She went for, I think, something with computers. And it's so crazy when I first met her. I'm like, wait, you've never grown up on a farm? And she's like, nope, never drove a tractor. And here she's fixing GPS for these big time farmers and never once drove a tractor. So there are a lot of areas in the egg industry that people should look at. With technology, you don't need to know how to run a tractor. And again, it's all people and it's stuff that can be learned. And it's a great space to be. These are some wholeheartedly awesome people, and they should definitely take a look at it, because give me a shout. I want to line you up. If you're not in the ag industry, I want to line you up with somebody in ag and give you the opportunity to view it.
So let's go a little controversial,
Okay.
because people who are not in that industry, people who don't necessarily live in the Midwest or don't have a lot of experience in the agricultural belts, the various ag belts within the U.S. There are some perceptions, and one of those perceptions would be old-timey thinking. You know what? They think about women in a certain way. They think about minorities in a certain way. They think about business in a certain way. They think about there's I think the reality, but I want you to tell us what the reality is. I think the reality is a lot more nuanced than that, and I think the reality is a lot more human than that. But there's sort of this perception that when you drive through Kansas, Nebraska, up through the Dakotas, that's just um, one kind of people, one kind of country. So tell us the reality of the kind of people one ends up working with. When you work in the ag industry, what kind of people do you end up working with?
You work with every type. It is crazy. You work with way different political views, religious views. You have some minorities, and yeah, there is such a vast range. There is becoming some more female farmers, and that is super fun. But no, it's definitely not the old what husband and wife with the pitchfork on the picture anymore. It is you're having some younger farmers taking on so much, and again, with so many different views, and now there are so many different ways of farming. You just think farming, okay, putting seeds in the ground and pulling it out. No, you have organic and conventional, and you have no till, and you have full till. And again, we're always trying to figure out what is best fit for that land and how can we produce the most. I mean, when you go to eastern North Dakota and you have, your sugar beets and potatoes, and it's like we could never grow sugar beets over here in our sand and our rolling hills. And then you get to western North Dakota and you get more cattle ranchers, but then it's more dry and it you can't grow a lot of the crops. But no, we are very futuristic people. I hope that they can look at that. We think a lot about the future, and we utilize technology a lot. I have some of my best farmers being in their 60s and 70s knowing how to run GPS and run their phones, and they grasp onto technology very well, which also was a shock to me. And it's crazy to look at my grandfather who's going to be 90 in a couple months, and I'm like, "Grandpa, you have seen it all. You have seen pony and plow all the way up to now tractors driving themselves." And I'm like, in 90 years, that's crazy. And now we're having combines that can change their speed on how good or bad the crop is coming in. And it's just astonishing to me. But yes, we utilize technology a lot. We're always trying to grow. When you have meetings with farmers and ranchers, the different groups that show up and how eager they are to learn is pretty awesome.
The one thing that I would say, maybe it's not universal, but close to universal, uh, amongst all of that diverse range of human beings, is this sense, though, that um, I'm going to speak in their voice. We farmers are hoping to feed the world. We're hoping to make the world a better place. We're hoping to do our little part to contribute to a better world. But sometimes it's got to seem like there are folks thousands of miles away in the capitals of the world, not just the US, but capitals all over the world, making decisions, deciding things that impact costs, that impact interest rates, that impact tariffs, that impact um, um, free trade, controlled trade. And ultimately, it's got to be so anxiety inducing to not know when you start the year in the spring, when you make your financial decisions, you decide how big of a loan do I need to get? What's the best interest rate I can get on that loan? And then, okay, what are we going to plant? Where are we going to plant it? How are we going to rotate our crops? Or where are we going to spend money on cattle? What are we going to spend on crops? And then what kind of crops? And you roll these dice. You make these decisions, and then as that year progresses, April, May, June, July, August, and you hear decisions being made elsewhere, you don't really know what are you going to make when it comes to August, September, October? That that is close to, I think, a universal experience for many farmers, and that may be where some of the edge comes in because they are tight, they are uncertain, and they don't like not being in control. Um, and I don't have an answer to that. But I think that that can help us to have some empathy for the life that farmers are leading while they're trying to make the world a better place. Um, Back to business. I had one question for you. If you were going to give advice to other leaders who are leading people like you, what advice would you give them? What would be the do's and don'ts for leading someone like JaSondra Schmidt?
Ooh, that might be a long list of how to manage me. Um, my biggest thing is listen. Please just ask questions and listen. We have a lot to give. And what I've learned is that I might need a little bit of a confidence boost every once in a while. I am always in my head constantly thinking of things, and one of them that I'm always worried about is, am I doing a good enough job? Am I doing a good enough job? And so just giving some reassurance and some confidence and giving some tasks and putting us kind of out of our comfort zone a little bit. We might need that sometimes. The job that I'm in today, I'm more on the technician mechanical side of things, which I never thought I would be, and it was because someone thought that I would be good there, and I definitely tried combating it. And now it's one of the greatest blessings that I'm able to learn more, and now I'm able to run this team. But I would say yes, confidence boosting, giving us giving us more goal or not goals, giving us opportunities to move forward and listening, asking us the questions and really truly listening to us, not just calling and only talking about work, like getting to know us as well. In a world where everything is online, just talk to us like another human because you learn so much. And that is so important to me. I make sure to call my team constantly. And even on our one on ones, I don't try and just stick to work. I try and make it a lot of how are you and what are you doing? And tell me about your kids and your life and what else can you tell me about yourself? Because that you create such a close relationship with them. And then when you ask all these questions, you already know kind of what your employer or employee is going to do when you know when they get into a situation. I'm not having to question, okay, if I put so and so here, how are they going to react? I have asked them enough questions and we've done enough stuff that
Mhm.
I already know how they're going to react and do in that role.
And I imagine, you're gonna know when you're gonna be asking them to do something that won't come naturally to them, or that they might, in fact, not agree with, but there's another side of the story that they need to hear. You're gonna have the kind of relationship that leads them in a new direction when it's necessary, as opposed to just feeding them what they already want to hear. Jasondra, I want to be sensitive to your time. Your time is precious, and I'm thinking so on a Sunday afternoon after you wrap this up. Do you have more hay to haul? Do you have more equipment to fix, or do you get to take a little bit of time off before Monday starts?
I wish I could say we'd have more time off. Nope. Yep, I'm gonna go grab our girls and we're gonna head out to the hay field and finish stacking. Because when you rent some land that is also controlled by the government, there are timelines, and so we have to get some hay off of there. And then we do have a baler to fix, and we have some more decisions to figure out about some equipment that we need to fix. So when we go at home on Sunday nights, there's a little bit of time to reflect. I try and throw my house together as fast as I can. I usually look at my life, and if one part is kind of falling apart, I know the other two are must be going really well. I don't do all three things of house, family, and farm and work all well. So one of them has to be falling apart. But one thing I try and throw the house together at least on a Sunday night to set my week up, and me and my husband try and do that on somewhat of a Sunday night, being like, okay, what do we need to get done on Sunday here so that our week isn't as crazy? So that's what we're going to be doing here.
So I so appreciate you sharing that because sometimes I find myself, like others, I'm sure, falling into this mindset of, oh, Monday's coming. My work is so hard. Life is so tough. The reality is, you compare the two, I got it so easy, and so I appreciate you doing what you do, JaSondra. And this has been a great conversation. Hopefully, we'll have a chance to do it again sometime. But I know this has been really valuable for the people who have been listening. Any any final words you want to share?
No, not really. Just yeah, if you have an itch to get to know the egg industry, we are all with open arms. So please reach out to anyone. Reach out to me if you have any questions or want to know what an actual farm looks like or who we are. Please reach out because we are more than happy to give some learning and answer questions. So please reach out.
And I will make sure we include in the episode show notes your contact information, like your LinkedIn profile and your TikTok handle or profile, so that people can in fact reach out to you if they're driven to do that. So thank you. Have a wonderful, busy rest of your day, and we'll talk again soon. Thanks,
Thanks,
JaSondra.
thanks, Dan.